Hello, I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington. Tonight on America Decides, deadline delayed. A federal judge temporarily blocks President Trump's federal buyout offer. What happens next with more than 40,000 staffers agreeing to leave so far? Democratic lawmakers are raising a red flag about whether the move is even legal. A focus on religion, the president gives remarks at the National Prayer Breakfast as he announces a plan to create a Freedom of Religion Commission. The task force will address anti-Christian bias he claims was boosted by the Biden White House.
We have to bring religion back. We have to bring it back much stronger. It's one of the biggest problems that we've had over the last fairly long period of time. We have to bring it back.
And later in this hour, first days at the DOJ, Attorney General Pam Bondi orders a review of the prosecutions against President Trump and a freeze on funding for sanctuary cities. So we'll get into that. But we're going to start tonight with Caitlin Huey-Burns on Capitol Hill and Ed O'Keefe at the White House. A lot of news on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. So, Caitlin, let's start with this delay in the deadline for federal workers to accept the Trump administration's controversial so-called buyout. They now have until Monday, so just a few extra days, to decide whether they want to leave with 8 months of pay and benefits. Why did this federal judge push it back, and why for just a couple of days?
Yeah, and this was in response to lawsuits that were filed by labor unions representing these workers to essentially delay until Monday, as you mentioned, and could be delayed even further. The judge was essentially saying that they want time to review the case. And there was a big question about what happens right now if you have agreed to that buyout, if you are planning to agree to that buyout. And Nancy, there's a lot of discussion up here on Capitol Hill about whether the president, the government can actually do that. I mean, government funding runs out here on March 14th. There is a lot of discussion about whether and how this kind of buyout would even work. And that's why you've had a lot of workers kind of in limbo here.
Right. If you're a federal worker who has agreed to take this offer and suddenly there's a delay and a federal judge saying, I'm not so sure, that kind of puts you in a tricky situation. Ed, what has the administration's response been to this? And has there been any reaction from Elon Musk, who's heading up this effort to slim the federal government?
Not from us directly. The White House saying that they're pleased that the judge gave federal employees a few more days to consider the generous offer and decide whether or not they want to work from their offices or want to get out of government service. The last accounting for how many have accepted this is more than 40,000. And in court today, in that Boston court, Justice Department lawyers were saying tens of thousands of employees had accepted this. We're told by the White House we'll get an updated number at some point later tonight when the deadline was supposed to occur. And we may get another update over the weekend because as the White House sees it now, the deadline's essentially just been extended to Sunday night. The judge said he's holding a hearing Monday afternoon, but the White House was telling us Sunday night now, they believe, is the new deadline. We'll see. And remember, they were hoping for 6 figures worth of federal employees to take this. 40,000 is not that. It may be more than that now, but let's see how close they get to even low 6 figures across the federal government and its 2 million civilian federal employees.
Ed, late this afternoon, you notified us about some related news. Several state attorneys general announcing they are suing the Trump administration over DOGE and what the state attorney generals say is unauthorized access to sensitive information on federal computer systems. What can you tell us about this new lawsuit?
Yeah, so it's New York Attorney General Tish James and the top state lawyers from Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Maryland, Minnesota, Nevada, Rhode Island, and Vermont. What do they all have in common? They're Democratic attorneys general, of course. They're suing, arguing that in the last week, the U.S. Department of Treasury has given Elon Musk access to Americans' personal private information, state bank account data, and other information that is some of our country's most sensitive data. As the richest man in the world, Elon Musk is not used to being told no, but in our country, they argue, no one is above the law. They will file suit in the coming days to try to block DOGE's access, believing it's an extra legal or illegal attempt to potentially jeopardize the personal data of Americans. Today is a great example, Nancy, of how a president can issue orders, can try to enact new policy, but people can sue to slow it or stop it. And that's what we saw today when it comes to the birthright citizenship arguments in Seattle and a court in Maryland yesterday, stopping that attempt. And now this pause, at least, or delay of the deadline on the buyouts. Now let's see if various cases, including now the one that these state attorneys general are working on, can somehow block DOGE from continuing its work.
Okay, that'll be interesting to watch. I want to switch gears and ask both of you about this marathon meeting between President Trump and House Republicans at the White House today to talk about the budget. Caitlin, these things usually go about an hour or so. Last I checked, they were into hour 4. So what were they discussing and why did it run so long?
Yeah, Nancy, this went way over time. Actually, Speaker Johnson was supposed to be here in the Capitol meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Went well past that meeting. Netanyahu left, and Johnson and House leadership just returned here moments ago to the Capitol. And we just heard from some Republican leaders saying that this was a very detailed meeting. They got into the nitty-gritty on not only top-line budget numbers, but some of the detailed policies that they want to see. Leader Scalise told us that they got out a whiteboard and they were actually, working on numbers. And it's so important because we saw late last year how if Republicans and Donald Trump are not on the same page, this can easily blow up. So that's really the main priority here, is for lawmakers here on Capitol Hill to get a real sense of what the president wants, what he wants in this budget bill, what he'll want in a reconciliation package coming forward. Yeah. And by and large, there's been this debate up here on Capitol Hill of whether and when Congress will exert itself, given all the executive orders coming from the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. And on this issue, on the budget, on reconciliation, moving forward on taxes, for example, that's where Republican lawmakers are trying to argue that's where we're going to really shine here. So we'll see, devil's in the details, as we well know with this conference.
And Ed, the nitty-gritty, as Caitlin put it, is so critical here because if Republicans are going to try to move something on immigration without any Democratic support, they're going to have to find a way to keep all the Republicans on board, which is never easy.
You know, to paraphrase the great rapper Eminem, they don't want to lose their chance to go because this opportunity comes once in a lifetime. And the reality is they can only use this gimmick, this legislative gimmick, once. It's called reconciliation. And they want to pack that with as much of this economic-themed legislation as they can. And you're right, get it through with just Republicans. And the straddling of Republicans from high-tax states who want deductions for those that pay a lot in property taxes versus the Freedom Caucus, who doesn't want to do anything near that, and the need to get a big legislative win is even causing some senators like Lindsey Graham now to say, let's try it on our own, on our end of the Capitol, to see if we can do it. The House today, by spending so much time with the president, trying to prove to him, no, let us take the lead on this. The overall issue for Americans is if Republicans fail to do this, then they've basically lost their shot. And they're going to have to go to Democrats at that point, and that could prolong things and really spoil the Trump agenda, at least from a legislative sense. And it's why we've seen the president in the interim spend so much time issuing these executive orders and trying to make changes in personnel policy to demonstrate some kind of action while Congress is still sorting out what to do.
Ed, you've suddenly got my palms sweaty and got me hungry for mom's spaghetti. Thank you so much for that. Ed O'Keefe, Caitlin Huey-Burns. Talk to you next time.